Well, I'll tell you, everybody, what a way to begin Bill Matic live after post-game shows. Live after the disaster that was the Soldier Field, 38-0 butt whooping. Welcome inside. This is what we're doing after every Bills game this year. Why am I doing this? Because this feels to be, in my estimation, one of the single most anticipated seasons for any football team of this century, of these last 25 years. The Bills have been knocking on the door year after year. They have the reigning MVP. They have a real element right now of urgency, and it's the final year of this stadium. And me and NFL history are inextricably linked forever. I own that. I love that so much. And so I wanted to use all of that, put it in a big pot, stir it up with a little 90s nostalgia, because, again, that is really of my DNA. And so Bill Matic is a reference to Nas's Illmatic. And what's more 90s than the Bills? Zubaz, Andre Reed, and everything else. So let's do this after every game, everybody. And this was quite the experience. My God. Everything from a Bill standpoint was an absolute nightmare. And I found it interesting that over the course of the night during this broadcast, Greg Olsen is trying to insist that the Bears are having the time of their lives. This is so exciting. Ben Johnson's offense is humming. Caleb Williams is what everybody has been waiting for. All of this asset of weapons are at his disposal. And look at how great the Bears look. This is exciting. And then Joe Davis asks, well, what does it mean for the Bills? No, nothing. Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. To me, this feels very counterintuitive. If it means nothing for the Bills because they didn't care, and they didn't play their starters, and it didn't matter, then how can it matter that the Bears look good? It has to be one or the other. Either this is important for the Bears because they played well against a team that expects to compete for the Super Bowl, or it doesn't matter because the Bears went out there and played a MAC team and beat a MAC team in a preseason game, in an exhibition. So which one is it? To me, I think, frankly, it's not all that impressive from a Bears standpoint, and it's not a calamity from a Bills standpoint, but there's some concern from a Buffalo standpoint as well. The other thing that I would just say about this, if you were a Bills fan and you're watching my breakdown right now, God bless you for sticking around for the entire game, because that essentially became a Bears infomercial, which I thought was a mistake, because these things are decided before games begin, and clearly the Fox broadcast is in Chicago. They probably assume that Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson will play more than Josh Allen. They kind of know Josh Allen won't play. And so if they're going to build a star one way or the other, you got to build it around a broadcast with a guy that plays versus a guy that doesn't. Also, Chicago's a bigger market, so maybe Fox is just kind of betting on the fact that if they can get market number 3 invested, fine. And I know they interviewed Brandon Beane, and I know they interviewed, but by the time Beane comes on, the game is so over. But you can't know that. Okay. They have Josh Allen early, but it was like, to me, the whole broadcast narrative was all about the new look Bears, which is like, is that the most interesting thing in a Bills-Bears matchup? Or is the team that is this close to finally winning its first ever championship potentially, it just needs this or that to break their way? To me, that's a far more interesting narrative. And it shouldn't really be skewed one way or the other. To me, it's a national broadcast. You've got to kind of be even-handed. So if you sat through that, God bless you. Every single week, we are going to do the goods and the bads and the ethereal. The goods come in the form of the Bills theme song. Let's give you a little bit, if there is, of good. All right, so your shouts are limited, all right? But let's give it to Frank Gore, who once again ran hard, ran with purpose, got a lot of snaps in this game, which is very much indicative of a coaching staff that wants to see whether he belongs on this roster and how much of a role he's going to have on this team. Gore does have the fumble, not great. Obviously, you'd rather not have that. But what Gore has proven through training camp and the preseason and these 2 preseason games is that in terms of depth on this roster, and there's always going to be injuries to running backs, we know that it's going to be James Cook and Ray Davis 1 and 2. After that is where these guys are probably trying to figure out whose roles are what and how many snaps will you get, and does it make sense to keep X number of running backs? Gore clearly is being given a chance to win that opportunity. And I thought again tonight, it was one of the rare bright spots. I think what you get with Frank Gore is a guy that takes nothing for granted. A guy that is grown up with a father who also took nothing for granted. Frank Gore Sr. Is a all-time running back, and he's going to end up in the Pro Football Hall of Fame one day more than likely. But Frank Gore Sr.'s entire attitude was say nothing, put your head down, go to work. And that professionalism, you can just tell rubbed off on his son, because what you see Frank Gore Jr. do is just run hard, hand the ball off to the ref, put the ball down to the field, get back to the huddle, and just keep doing that. He has that kind of attitude, and I think it's refreshing. I think it's impressive. And that is one of the rare bright spots in what was a debacle of a second preseason game. The second thing is you have Chavers, who gets that back shoulder throw, hauls it in. We know that he's been one of the talks of the entire preseason. Again, the type of guy that I think the Bills are looking for, which I think is smart. The guys that are fringe roster guys that work their tails off to get on the team and earn reps and snaps. Why do you need to have those guys? Those guys are super interesting. They're super important. And you can think about a host of those guys that were part of the Patriots teams that won all of those Super Bowls. As squads grow and develop and get successful, they go to playoff games, they have deep playoff runs, they have success, you got to pay some of them. You got to pay a lot of them if you want to keep that unit together. And Fox did that graphic about the offseason that the Bills have spent money on. To keep guys who have gotten paid inspired, on edge, motivated, a locker room hungry, and rooting for one another, you have to have stories that all of the guys, players, all of the guys rally around. And guys that are fringe roster guys, undrafted, late draft picks that are heart and hustle and grit, when they are on the roster, in the locker room, making contributions, the veterans, the well-paid guys, they get sparked. They get into it. And you need that hunger. Now, the Bills haven't won a Super Bowl yet, so they should not be fat and happy. But it always happens when you have a veteran locker room. You do need fresh blood to come in there to keep guys on edge. And you need to have guys push. You need to have guys rally around, Cinderella stories or underdogs. So I think that those types of pieces, Bean and McDermott very properly kind of insert in there, give those guys chances, and have brought them along very well, coach them very well. So Chavers is one of those guys, Gore is one of those guys, and we're seeing it pay off. And I thought, the one guy in defense that might have flashed was Hancock. He makes a couple of plays in the backfield, kind of torpedoing his way through the defensive line, making a few stops. You like to see a few hard-nosed tackles like that. That was, at least refreshing on a night where there was so much bad defensively. He kind of stood out for having a few physical plays and physical moments in this game. That was probably the extent of the shouts. I'm all ears if you've got any else. Once again, leave all of your comments, your questions in the chat right now, and I will try to get to some of them. I will get to some of them after I'm done with my soliloquy here. So hit me up right there if you've got some shouts, if you got some gold stars you want to hand out, some stickers, helmet stickers, if you will. Hit me up on the chat, and I'll read through those. In terms of the bad, where to begin? Let's do this. Well, look, just the defense is so gory. It is hard to put into words. I mean, again, it's a preseason game, so you're not going to go crazy. But the Bills defense gave up 194 yards in the first quarter of this game. I mean, it's virtually impossible to give up nearly 200 yards of offense in a quarter of preseason football. These are not all starters. And I know that the Bears are going out there and Ben Johnson wants to impress people and Caleb Williams wants to take the next step forward and all that stuff. But like, to give up nearly 200 yards of offense in a quarter is outrageous. On top of that, for the game, and really, I mean, the Bears were barely playing in the fourth quarter. They gave up 528 yards. I know that you can say it doesn't matter. The Bills didn't have starters out there. That's not going to be their defense. But 528 yards of offense against the Bears, who had Tyler Bagent looking great and, guys you've never heard of out there, is really sickening. I mean, it's really, really bad. Nothing in the preseason is ever supposed to be crisp enough to gain 200 yards in a quarter, to get 528 in a game. And, not for nothing, but we're going to have to keep hammering home the third down efficiency. Last week, the Giants were 9 of 19 on third down. That's not great. Tonight, the Bears were even better, 9 of 16. And I can point to missed tackles, blown assignments, and just a wide open space in the middle of the field. Again, you're not showing anything on defense, so you're not dialing up blitzes. You're not applying a lot of unique pressure. You're not playing a lot of man, and you're basically, trying to put vanilla on tape so that regular season begins and none of the offensive coordinators and opposing teams have a lot of tells. But my God, I mean, Caleb Williams last year, was struggling quite a bit. And tonight, bing, 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 bing. Is some of this Ben Johnson? Sure. Is some of this a second-year guy finally understanding how to run an offense? Sure. But it should not look that easy. And the biggest concern to me was how easily everything came on those early drives. There was just massive amounts of space in the field that the Bears were taking advantage of. And while Ben Johnson might be a great offensive coordinator, I don't know if he's that much of a magician. The Bills defense is really got to consider, how to tighten up some of this for the third preseason game. And again, I know a lot of the starters aren't playing, but you've watched Jackson Dart, Caleb Williams, and Tyler Bagent all make a lot of big plays on you. So you're not going to go crazy because of the preseason, but defensively, there was almost nothing that was good. I mean, almost nothing. And you'd probably just burn this game film and say, like, we're not going to learn anything from it. We can't get too stuck in the weeds, but this is what we, ultimately, this is our goal for how we want to play defense. So let's get back to that and just ignore what happened to this game because it's just so undeniably terrible. This virtual measurement thing, I mean, this is now so hard to watch. That's an incomplete pass. It's obviously an incomplete pass, and we have to sit through this fakakta virtual measurement. What are we doing? Why is it taking so long? This is amazing. It's like your GPS is supposed to always help, right? And so you're leaving the house, going to the grocery store, and you've gone to the grocery store every day for, 15 years, the same exact way. You know how to get to the grocery store. And instead, GPS is telling you to take a right where you usually take a left and go down a back road. And you're like, that's definitely not the way to go. But you're following the GPS anyway, and it takes you some crazy roundabout way to get to the grocery store. That's what's happening with virtual measurement. This is not better. This was supposed to be better. It is definitively not better. And it's the preseason, so I'm not going to blow a gasket. But my God, how painful has the early virtual measurements been in the preseason? Also, Greg Olsen, you're interviewing people. Just ask a question and get out of the way. I mean, how much talking? I know it's a blowout game. I know you're trying to be conversational, but holy cow. It is perhaps simply a anxiety of mine, a personal annoyance because, I'm trained in question and answering, but what the questioner does, asking the person answering the question is the question with a question mark, and you get out of the way so you can get an answer. What you don't do is ask a question, then answer the question, then ask another question, and then answer that question, and then pause so the other person speaks. I mean, again, maybe because I'm watching in the middle of the night a blowout game in the preseason, I'm on edge anyway, but I'm like, would you just let Brandon Beane speak? Could you just ask a question? That would be helpful, Greg. And it's going to be hard to grade too much on offense because it was a blowout early, and of course there's no Josh. But I mean, there was a couple of times where Mike White just got blown the bleep up, and the offensive line collapsed. And there's a couple of those false starts early in the game. That's no good. I mean, geez, I know it's the backup quarterback, so it's not that big a deal, but there's something to sew up on every single part of this team after tonight. 180 yards of offense in this game by the Bills, only 12 first downs, 0 of 8 on third downs. They did not convert a third down all night. Went 0 of 8 on third downs. So again, that's not what it's going to look like, obviously. Again, there's plenty of time to fix the things that you need to fix because, you got a couple of weeks left to go before you got to kick things off. But my goodness, it was hard to find much that you could hang your hat on if you're a Bills fan or somebody in the Bills front office. All right, finally, we always like to do something a little larger than football. We honor the Buffalo. In so many ancient cultures, indigenous cultures, the buffalo was a sacred animal and still is a sacred animal. And so for the Bills, it is very special to be tethered to the buffalo. And so throughout this season, which could be a magical season, let's look for a little bit of magic. And as I'm listening to the Bears front office talk about their new stadium, and how they want to do this and that. It's going to feel like Chicago, and you're going to know that you're in Chicago. And then it's tagged with, and there's going to be a roof. Like, how depressing. How depressing that the Chicago Bears, the monsters of the Midway, the organization of Dick Butkus and the 85 Bears, rough, violent, angry and tough. George effing Halas. How depressing is it that this team, this organization wants a roof on top? We want to play under a roof. Well, that doesn't feel very Chicago to me. I don't know. I've been to Chicago many times. I never felt like, what speaks to me with Chicago is playing football indoors. I don't know. You know what always spoke to me going to Chicago was how blue collar and real and grounded and authentic and old school and traditional the city was, which is why I love it, which is why I love Chicago. I love Chicago because of Wrigley Field, because of all of the history of Wrigley Field. What I never thought was what feels like Chicago is 68 and climate controlled on artificial turf as I play football. So I'm saying this because the fact that the Bills chose open air, yes. The fact that they chose grass, yes. The fact that they chose the essence, the spirit of football. When all these other cold weather teams, Cleveland, Chicago, DC, they all want to be indoors now. They all suddenly want to play indoors because we want year-round events. Phooey. I think it stinks. I think it's depressing. And those are the types of things that drive me away from football. You know how football is going to lose me, a guy that's been with football for 45 years? By playing all these international games and playing all their games indoors. That's an easy way to lose me. So God bless the Buffalo Bills for playing outdoors and on grass in a new stadium. And it'll be better than all those stadiums. And who cares about a Final Four? And who cares about outdoor or indoor events year round? Don't need it. You play the way it was supposed to be played. And you look at all these teams that are winning Super Bowls these days. Are they dome teams? Last time I checked, Kansas City, outdoors. Philadelphia, outdoors. Where's all the dome teams winning Super Bowls? Huh? Okay. That's the bit. We honor the Buffalo. We do this after every game. We're doing this after every game. So bring it. Your comments, type them in, and make sure you are subscribed to the channel on YouTube. Find me, just type in this very social media handle. You might be watching on X. You might be watching on Instagram. That's at Damon Amendo. Same thing on YouTube. Go there, subscribe. That way you get notified and alert when we go live. All right. So let's see what you guys got on the broadcast, from the broadcast, and for tonight. Hit me up in the comments section, and we shall go through some of those right about now. To start things off, why wouldn't we start with Jesus? Bears offense looked more structured. We're going to see a lot more efficiency from Caleb Williams, and the offense is a lot more organized than it was last year. I agree. I thought Ben Johnson was an excellent head coaching candidate coming out of Detroit. Those offenses were phenomenal. I thought there were times Ben Johnson probably overthought things. Maybe he was trying to impress would-be GMs that would hire him in the offseason. I thought he got a little too cute at times last year. But, they were undone in the playoffs because of atrocious decision-making by Jared Goff and by a defense that got shredded by Jaden Daniels. It really wasn't a Ben Johnson problem. So I think very highly of Ben Johnson, and you can already see that the Bears look more professional than they did under the previous coaching staff. So I expect a better outfit than we saw the last couple of years. I would agree with that. Chris says, love it when the professional analysts pencil themselves into corners like that. LMAO. Yeah, that was when, he's asking a question to the guest in the booth, and it's a 4th down punt, and they got to go to break. I mean, so he's in the middle of a question, and it's like, oh, well, we got to go to break. So we'll get the answer on the flip side. I mean, I guess he thought maybe they were going to stay through the commercial, but it's a 4th down punt. Ask a quick question, get out of the way. Instead, it was like the most layered question ever. It was, come on. Justin, do you ever sleep, man? Sometimes, in short bursts. Tonight, I'm not going to get a lot of sleep because I'll be on the air at 6 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow morning on Sirius XM Channel 82. But also, you got to realize it's football season. And if there's any time that I get juiced, it is for football. It is for primetime football. And I'm here and I'm ready. And I won't be able to go to bed right away after this. So tomorrow morning, I will definitely be loopy. So you should tune in to Mad Dog Sports Radio, Channel 82. So there you go. Let's see. What else can I add here? Let's see. Here you go. You got Smitty. The Colts went 0-4 in the preseason the year they won the Super Bowl, and the 0-16 Lions went 4-0. Yeah, there's always funny things like this where, teams that are awesome in the preseason look like trash in the regular season and vice versa. So it's really not the win-loss record. What you're looking for, though, is individual efforts, how units play together, and just kind of an overall operational cohesion. And so we'll see. Not playing starters in the preseason is not necessarily some type of doom and gloom. The Rams have done it and had a lot of success. They won a Super Bowl without playing their starters in the preseason. Other teams think it's more important, so I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way to do it. I do think the defense, though, tonight for the Bills was a complete no-show. Let's see. Matt, how's it going, DA? How long until this is sponsored by Labatt Blue Light? Well, man, oh, man, that would be something else. We all know how much I love my blue light. If that were ever to happen, we're all here for it because nothing goes better with Bills football than a Labatt Blue Light, and it is probably my favorite light beer. And the Canadians, they know how to drink. Matt also asks or adds, Greg Olson is great calling games, but I could do without his interviews. I mean, yeah, Greg can be very insightful, but at the same time, it's in over his skis, I would say, asking questions. That's just like diarrhea of the mouth to just keep talking as you're supposed to be getting an answer from somebody else. And Matt also asks, all these billionaires want domes so they can monetize it with more events year round. It's about the money. MONEY, DA. Big props to the Bills for keeping it OG. That's absolutely correct. But I would also warn certain owners about this, and I would warn leagues about this, that what you do when you remove the authenticity of the event with indoor spectacle and football is that you will limit those really special moments. It's amazing. Every time there's a weather event at a football game, the networks cut to it and it's all over social media. You got to watch this. The snow is coming down. Jameis Winston diving in the snow in Cleveland becomes an immortal moment in a season that is completely lost. So what happens when there's only a handful of stadiums that will actually have that? What happens when the only snow that falls is at Lambeau or Buffalo? Like, is that better for the league? I would say no, even though they're getting Final Fours. Is it better when every home stadium feels exactly the same and there's no real home field advantage? Is that better? You know, think about Seattle. They went from the Kingdome to an outdoor field, and immediately the Seahawks' home field advantage became a thing. Now, the 12th man was always a thing in Seattle, but going to that stadium, because of the way it was created and built, the volume of the fans became a massive part of a home field advantage. They got better. Now, granted, the team was better, but that the home field advantage was better when they went outdoors. Is it better to have every antiseptic dome feel exactly the same? I would say no. So that's where I end up on that. And our friend Jack, our Diaper D alien, assistant producer on my YouTube channel, says that score bug was brutal. And yes, it was the new Fox score bug at the bottom that is transparent on the background. So it's just letters and numbers floating in front of the field, a little distracting. All right, that's going to be tonight's episode of Bill Matic. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us on this night, on this late night. We'll do this after every Bills game and have some special interviews over the course of the season as well with former Bills players and Bills insiders. So look for that. This is a podcast on YouTube, so you can listen to it in audio form as well if you just want to do that. Obviously, you can watch it on YouTube and just find it there. If you ever want episodes archived, they're all there. You can listen to them if you ever miss one or catch one a little bit late or have to, bag out early. It's always going to be there. Just look for it on my YouTube channel at Damon Amendolara and make sure you are subscribed. Okay, everybody, I'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early at 6 a.m. Eastern time on Sirius XM channel 82. We'll see you then.